One of the many things I love about the Nintendo Switch is easily its vast and strong game library. It features a lot of great first-party games like Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Kirby: The Forgotten Land. It also features great third-party games like Dragon Quest XI's and Monster Hunter Rise. Impossible ports like The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt, and Doom Eternal bring about both the ingenuity of those that port these games, as well as the simple ability of the system being able to play great games. Finally, one of my favorite things about the Switch are the many past games that have been ported to the system, specifically by the collection of games released by Nintendo themselves, Konami, Square Enix, and so on. Many of the games on these collections are great, while others are more curiosities that a potential buyer may have never played before. Either way, they often contain a decent to fantastic number of games for great economical prices. These are all available and often go on sale in the Nintendo eShop, so it's always worth your while to add them to a wish list and check and see if they pop on sale. Some of these are also offered physically, albeit sometimes in limited distribution websites like Limited Run Games. I wanted to take some time to highlight a number of these collections. I'll include those released, a few that are coming, and a couple I'm hoping will come out. Many of these collections are held within one collection title itself, while others are individual titles that are purchased in the eShop as a collection. The former often has features such as save states, borders, and rewind features, while the latter are just the individual games themselves. Of course, there's going to be collections that I will have missed, but the ultimate purpose of this video is to shed some light on the many collections that are currently available on the Nintendo Switch. Maybe you'll be surprised to learn some of your favorite games in the past are already playable on this great system. First, of course, is Nintendo. If you're a member of Nintendo Switch Online, you have access to a collection of original NES and SNES games that Nintendo offers. Both systems provide access to must-have series like Super Mario, Zelda, and Metroid. But unfortunately, quality of re-releases has dipped as of late with games like Jelly Boy. If you have the expansion pack for NSO, you will have access to the collection of original Nintendo 64 and Sega Genesis /Mega Drive games. Nintendo has made great improvements on the emulation for the Nintendo 64 games, but the number of games isn't as high as the NES and Super NES. Besides a couple of games on the NSO version Sega Genesis collection, Sega has already provided a good number of games and more on their own Sega Genesis Classics collection. I'd argue Sega's collection is the better deal and has an overall better interface. NSO's rewind feature is a bit clunky and you can't get rid of the side borders, whereas the Sega Genesis Classics has a smoother rewind, a fast forward option, and a few other border choices, including a black or blank one. Next collection by Nintendo is the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection. If you missed buying this online, sorry, you lose. This was only available for sale for a 6-month time period between October 2020 and March 2021. You could perhaps find a physical copy at your local video game retailer, as Nintendo fortunately produced a number of these. A couple of things are improved in each of the version of the games, although I'd argue the best game in this collection is Super Mario Galaxy. Where's the second Galaxy game at? Nintendo probably couldn't figure out the mechanics of controlling Mario and Yoshi with only a controller, I'm guessing. There's also the Famicom Detective Club, which contains 2 of the original Famicom games translated into English, remade, and released in the US for the first time. These are adventure-style games reminiscent of visual novels, though with more control of the story and the actions of the main character. Nintendo may have a few collections coming in the future. The remake of Advance Wars 1 and 2, originally scheduled to come out April 2022, will eventually see its release for the Nintendo Switch. Plus, there's the currently rumored Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance NSO collections coming. It's only a guess as to what games will come to these systems, though it's a certainty we'll see all of the Mario, Zelda, and Metroid games for them, and hopefully Pokemon as well. Also, while I mentioned Sega briefly in this collection, they do have a number of collections coming to the Nintendo Switch. First is the Sonic Origins coming in June 2022. It has both the OG and remade versions of Sonic 1, 2, 3 Knuckles combined, and Sonic CD. While the pricing structure may be confusing for some, this is an essential version of all the games, especially being able to play them in widescreen for the first time ever. This also marks like the 20th time that Sonic the Hedgehog 1 has been released on a Nintendo system. I do wish that Christian Whitehead and his studio would have remade Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episodes 1 and 2 in the vein of these original Sonics. Second is the Wonder Boy collection, which will feature the first 4 games of the Wonder Boy series. I admittedly don't know too much about the series besides the Hudson clone of the first entry being Adventure Island. The second through 4th entries look like platformers with RPG mechanics, which sounds like a fun mix to me. Next is Square Enix, who has 2 decent collections, the Mana and Saga / Final Fantasy Legend collections. These lean heavily on their Game Boy library, which pairs surprisingly well when playing the Switch on the go. Mana contains Final Fantasy Adventure for the Game Boy, as well as Secret of Mana and Seiken Densetsu 3 for the SNES. The last entry has been renamed Trials of Mana, as this is the first time this game has been released officially outside of Japan and fully translated into English. I loved Final Fantasy Adventure as a kid. I had tried the SNES games a few times before, but I couldn't get into them. Yet it wasn't until this collection came to the Switch that I finally played through to completion both SNES games. And these are all great, with Trials of Mana being the best and sleeper hit of them. Saga / Final Fantasy Legend contains the 3 FF Legend games that were released for the Game Boy. I have played through to completion the first 2, but never could finish the 3rd one, as it just couldn't hold my attention for some reason. Out of these 3, the second entry is definitely the best. In Japan, these are known as the Saga games. If you enjoyed the gameplay of these Game Boy games, remakes of Romancing Saga 2 and 3, which were on the Super Famicom, as well as Saga Frontier and Saga Scarlet Grace, are available on the Nintendo Switch currently. Since the Pixel Remastered versions of Final Fantasy 1 through 6 were released last year, I hope that Square Enix releases these in a bundle or collection under the same UI, much like the rest of the games here for the Switch. These need to be out on the home consoles, and hopefully they release it without the super thin font. Capcom is next to be featured, and boy have they done a great job of re-releasing their games on the Switch. Besides standalone re-releases of games from the Resident Evil series, they feature a number of collections. First up are the 5 various Mega Man collections. I'll briefly go over these. Mega Man Legacy Collection 1, which contains the NES mainline Mega Man games numbers 1 through 6. Mega Man Legacy Collection 2, which contains Mega Man numbers 7 through 10. 7 was an SNES game, 8 for the PS1, and 9 and 10 were download only in 2008 and 2010. Mega Man X Legacy Collection 1, which contains Mega Man X numbers 1 through 4, 1 and 3 on the SNES, 4 on the PS1. Mega Man X Legacy Collection 2, which contains Mega Man X numbers 5 through 8. 5 and 6 were on the PS1, and 7 and 8 on the PS2. And then finally, Mega Man 0/ZX Legacy Collection, which contains Mega Man 0 numbers 1 through 4, as well as Mega Man ZX and ZX Advent. 1 through 4 were GBA games, and the ZX ones were on the Nintendo DS. Now, I barely glossed the surface of these, but if you've seen my top 10 Mega Man games video, you'll know I'm a huge fan of this series. These are great games and worth buying, especially when they go on sale, which is often. Be wary of physical copies of these games. Mega Man and X Legacy Collections 1 and 2 are shown to be combined into one entry on said physical copy, but the second collection of the mainline and X are downloadable only, provided via a code. Fortunately, this is not the case with Mega Man 0/ZX Legacy Collection. All 6 games are on the physical cartridge. If you like fighting games, Capcom has you covered, and then some. It has Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, which contains 12 different Street Fighter games. Does it feel like there were a bunch of versions of Street Fighter 2? You're right, there was, and this collection has 5 of them. To their credit though, each version has their own subtle but unique twist to it. 4 of the 12 games also have online enabled gameplay. Other games in this collection is not as well known, but pioneering Street Fighter 1, it also has 3 Street Fighter Alpha games and 3 Street Fighter 3 games. Also released is the Capcom Beat'Em Up bundle, which contains 7 different games in the beat 'em up genre. This includes the very well-known Final Fight, as well as others like Captain Commando, Knights of the Round, nope, not the Final Fantasy VII summon, the King of Dragons, Armored Warriors, Warrior Fate, Battle Circuit. There's also the Capcom Arcade Stadium, which instead of buying the entirety of the collection at once, allows players to buy whichever era of gaming that Capcom is featuring via their arcades. Each era has 10 unique titles for up to a total of 30 games. There are a few doubles from previous collections, like some of the Street Fighter II games and Final Fight. If you like the arcade versions of various Capcom games, like the 1940 series or Ghouls and Ghosts, these are worth checking out. Capcom also has the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Trilogy. It's compiling the first 3 games in the Ace Attorney series, which were originally released for the GBA. They play like exploratory visual novels, taking control of lawyer Phoenix Wright, who must gather evidence and prove his client's innocent. Admittedly, I've never played these games myself, but fans of the series I've heard have spoken very highly of them. They also have the Capcom Fighting Collection coming out in the future in June 2022. Are you sick of Street Fighter II? Too bad, because you get 3 additional, albeit different versions of said game. It also includes the cult classic Darkstalkers, as well as some other niche fighting games. Capcom's fighting games are generally of the highest quality, so this collection is pretty solid. And while we're on the topic of fighting games, I do wish that WB Games would release the Mortal Kombat Arcade Collection that was released formerly for the PS3 and Xbox 360 back in 2011. I've heard that this was rated back in 2020 for the Nintendo Switch, but nothing has since come up for this. Going back to Capcom, why hasn't the Disney Afternoon Collection appeared on the Nintendo Switch yet? It contains 6 NES games on it, such as DuckTales and Rescue Rangers 1 and 2, and it's been out since 2017. We got the Disney Classic Games Collection on the Switch. This collection, by the way, is quite impressive, as it's got the SNES and Sega Genesis / Mega Drive versions of Aladdin, Lion King, and Jungle Book, as well as a couple Game Boy versions too. Konami has quite the negative reputation as of late, what with being more of a company that makes pachinko / casino games, but they do a great job of providing rights to their properties so other developers like M2 can put together great collections of their fantastic backlogs. This includes Castlevania Anniversary Collection, which has all of the console Castlevania games released between 1986 through 1994. This includes the 3 on the NES, 2 on the Game Boy, the SNES and Sega Genesis / Mega Drive Castlevanias, and released for the first time in the US, Kid Dracula for the NES / Famicom. A free update is available that allows players to access the Japanese versions of all 3 games. Next is the Castlevania Advance Collection, which contains the 3 Metroidvania-style Castlevania games that were released on the GBA. I played through all 3 of these on this collection for the first time last year, and they were superb. Especially noteworthy is Aria of Sorrow, which is probably the best of the 3. Love that Julius Belmont fight. This collection also contains Castlevania Dracula X, which is a remake / demake of Rondo of Blood that was originally released on PC Engine in Japan only. Rondo of Blood never made it to our version of this with TurboGrafx 16 in the US. Rondo of Blood is the better game in my opinion, and it's stuck on the Castlevania Requiem collection with Symphony of the Night on the PS4. Because Sony helped to develop Requiem, it will never come to the Switch, unfortunately. But the Switch also got the Contra Anniversary collection. It's essentially 5 games: Contra, Super Contra, Contra 3 The Alien Wars, Contra Hardcore, and Operation C. What's interesting about this is that it has multiple versions of these said games. For Contra, it has the arcade, NES, and Famicom versions. For Super Contra, it has the arcade and NES versions. Contra 3 and Hardcore C's, it has the US and international versions, with the latter being relabeled as Probotector, while also modifying many of the humans, including the heroes like Bill Riser, into robots. Finally, Konami has also released the Arcade Classics Anniversary Collection. It contains 7 shoot-'em-up games, including Gradius 1 and 2 and Life Force, as well as the unfairly difficult Haunted Castle. This is essentially an arcade version of Castlevania 1, if the original NES had larger, more detailed sprites and had skeletons that could kill Simon with 1 or 2 hits. It's a decent curiosity piece, but the best part of this collection is by far the shmups. Coming later this year is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Cowabunga Collection, which rivals the Castlevania collections for how fantastic it is. It contains both arcade TMNT games, the 3 NES and Game Boy games, Hyperstone Heist for the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive, Turtles in Time for the SNES, and all 3 versions of Tournament Fighters. These games rank from the you love it or hate it NES TMNT to the absolutely sublime Turtles in Time. If you like TMNT at all, this is a must-buy when it comes out. Namco also has a few collections that they have released on the Switch. First up is the Namco Museum Arcade Pack, which contains arcade versions of several classics such as Pac-Man, Galaga, and Dig Dug, as well as bonuses like Pac-Man Championship Edition 2+. Overall, it contains 12 great games for fans of Namco arcades. If you like console versions, Namco Museum Archives Volumes 1 and 2 may be up your alley. Volume 1 contains NES versions of games like Pac-Man, Mappy, and Xevious, as well as a bonus 8-bit version of Pac-Man Championship Edition. Volume 2 sees 10 more NES games like Legacy of the Wizard, Pac-Land, and Dig Dug 2, along with a never-before-ported version of arcade game Gapless. I recommend these volumes if you played any of these Namco NES games before. If you haven't and you're not interested in them, feel free to take a pass. Namco also has the Pac-Man Museum Plus coming out later this month. It'll have 14 different Pac-Man games, including Pac-Mania, Pac-Attack, Pac-Man Championship Edition, the original, and others as well. Missing in this collection is any sign of Ms. Pac-Man or Junior Pac-Man. Since these were unauthorized ports back when they were first released, and before they were bought out by Namco, it's no surprise that they're being left behind. Namco also has another collection, the Klonoa Fantasy Reverie series, coming. These will be remasters of Klonoa's 1 and 2, which released on the PS1 and 2 respectively. I've honestly never heard of this series before, but I've heard a lot of excitement from some vocal individuals in the video game community about the pending release of these games. Being platformers, these might just be right up my alley. SNK also has a few collections available for the Nintendo Switch. SNK 40th Anniversary Collection has an impressive 25 different games on it. Of these, 23 of them are the arcade versions, 10 are console versions, and 8 have both the arcade and console versions. These games are a testament to SNK's game development before they released the Neo Geo in 1990. And speaking of that, Samurai Showdown Neo Geo Collection includes the fighting games of Samurai Showdown 1 through 5, with 3 versions of the 5th entry in it. This is a weapons-based fighter set in 18th century Japan, and it features beautiful pixel art and backgrounds as seen on the Neo Geo back in its heyday. The last collection SNK offers is Neo Geo Pocket Color Selection, which includes 10 games such as Metal Slug First and Second Mission and Fatal Fury First Contact from the Neo Geo Pocket Color. This was a device that was released in 1999 but was swiftly discontinued only after a year due to a number of circumstances. Unfortunately, I can't speak to any of the games on these collections except for Crystalis on the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection. I haven't even touched upon collections like the ACA Neo Geo because they sell individually and technically don't fall into the camp of all-in-one collections I'm featuring here. Regardless, you can't go wrong with these individual games. Make sure you check them out, especially the Fatal Fury and King of Fighters series. And while we're talking about fighting games, I'd like to touch upon the Double Dragon and Kunio-kun Retro Brawler bundle made by Arc Systems. This is an impressive collection containing 18 different games released between 1988 and 1993, 11 of which have never been released in the US and are translated into English. This collection contains gems like Double Dragons 1 through 3 and River City Ransom. All of these are NES/Famicom games, and if you like beat-em ups with some sports games intertwined in there, I recommend this collection. The NSO NES collection contains the original NES Ninja Gaiden, but Koei Tecmo has released the Ninja Gaiden Master Collection. While this collection doesn't have the original arcade Ninja Gaiden or any of these NES games, it does contain Ninja Gaiden Sigma 1 and 2, as well as Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge. The first 2 entries are apparently ports from the PS3 era, which are themselves ports of the original Xbox Ninja Gaiden games. Just like the old NES games, these are very difficult. Gameplay is hack and slash, much like the God of War type gameplay that was the style at the time. Defeat enemy, get an orb, replenish health ability meter. I haven't played these myself, but I've heard the first entry here is done very well and makes it worth it. Danganronpa Decadence is another collection which was published by company Spike Chunsoft. I personally haven't played any of these games as well, but the premise of them is intriguing. Gameplay is similar to both the Ace Attorney games crossed with Persona. This seems to be the case since you play as a character both investigating murders that occur as based in the story, while also going through standard life in high school. This series is lauded for fantastic stories, gameplay that feels quicker and snappier than the Ace Attorney series, and great music. Also available is Valis, the Phantasm Soldier collection published by Edea. This includes Valis 1 through 3. The first one released on the MSX/PC 8801, and the second and third entries on TurboGrafx CD/PC Engine. I don't know much about these games or this series, but these appear to be action platformers interspersed with various cinematics as the main hero, Yuko, progresses. The type of gameplay is reminiscent of the original NES Ninja Gaiden games, though not nearly as difficult. Super Valis 4 is on the NSO currently, though that features a number of changes from the PC Engine version that was released. Yuko is a normal Japanese high school student who must protect 3 different worlds from threats. These look like they could be fun platformers, so if you see this on sale, I'd recommend giving these a try. While not part of this or any collection, avoid Valis X as much as you can. Fans of the series don't recognize this as a canon entry to the series as it's an erotic visual novel. Super ick. Taito has released a couple of interesting collections. These include the Darius Cosmic Collection Arcade and Console collections. The Darius series of games are shoot-'em-ups featuring a robotic maritime creatures theme for the enemies and bosses that you fight. These collections are self-explanatory. Arcade pulls directly from the games they've released in the arcades, with console pulling from Darius games via the Sega Genesis, Mega Drive, Master System, SNES, and PC Engine. Both of these collections admittedly are probably the most expensive out of all of these, running from $45 to $60 each. Because of this, I recommend only buying these if they're on sale, if you're interested in some well-designed shmups, and or you've played these games before. I've spent a ton of time on SNES's Darius Twin because of the ease to play and the fantastic music, so I snagged the console collection when that went on sale. Another collection is Taito Milestones, which contains 10 unique titles released into the arcades in the 1980s, from a puzzler like Kicks, which I played on the Game Boy, to platforming shooter elevator action. This sports a unique variety of different games. Although I'm not sure why games like Bubble Bobble and Arkanoid are missing. This is another collection I'd only recommend getting if you know these games or are vested in Taito's arcade presence. Space Invaders isn't on this, but that's because 11 different versions of it are available on the Space Invaders Invincible collection, provided of course you get this version of that collection and not the standard or forever edition. All of these are essentially just the Space Invaders game in different flavors, so your mileage may vary. While we're talking about classic games, another collection to touch upon would be the Atari Flashback Classics collection. This contains 150 unique games from the Atari 2600 and 5200, along with additional features for many of these games like online multiplayer and leaderboards. These will really hit Atari fans in the nostalgia feels, though for me this was just a little before my time, so I don't have any connection to these games. Fair warning, if you're looking to play the worst game of all time, E.T., you're out of luck, as that game is not included in this collection. I'm surprised we haven't seen an Intellivision or Coleco selection for the Switch yet. Toys for Bob, falling under the Blizzard/Activision, and now I suppose Microsoft camp, are the Crash Bandicoot N. Sane Trilogy and Spyro Reignited Trilogy. My wife loves these series, especially the Spyro games. These are remakes of the respective trilogies from the PS1, so very well and beautifully done. These have had their graphics fidelity toned down a bit from where they'd be on the PS4, but in doing so, it allows all the games on these collections to run surprisingly smooth on the Switch. It still amazes me to see Crash Bandicoot on a Nintendo system, even though technically he's been on Nintendo games since 2001 via Wrath of Cortex. Regarding Blizzard themselves, there's the Blizzard Arcade Collection. This includes The Lost Vikings 1 and 2, Rock and Roll and RPM Racing, and Blackthorn. The Lost Vikings is a great puzzle platformer that has a lot of depth to it. I only just started playing it a few years ago and was surprised at how much fun it was. This collection apparently added the second Lost Vikings and RPM Racing for no additional cost, so it seems the value just keeps coming. Speaking of Microsoft-owned companies for series that are surprising to be on a Nintendo system, we have the Doom Slayers Collection by Bethesda. This contains Doom 1 through 3, 64, and 2016's Doom. Do note that if you download this, it won't contain any actual collection UI like previous collections I may have spoke of. If you buy a physical copy of this game in stores, it will only contain 2016's Doom on it, though it does provide download codes for the other 4 Doom games. These games run extremely well on the Nintendo Switch, including, and surprisingly, 2016's Doom. I especially loved the early Doom games, so I can't recommend these enough. Regarding Microsoft, I'm hoping that the Rare Replay Collection will come to the Nintendo Switch at some point. There's a decent relationship between both Nintendo and Microsoft, as shown with Banjo-Kazooie being included in both Smash Bros. And the Nintendo 64 NSO Collection. With that said, the Rare Replay Collection would be a great fit. After all, if this has NES favorites of mine such as RC Pro-Am 2, Snake Rattle and Roll, and Battletoads, though no Wizards and Warriors 1 and 2 for some reason. It also has Nintendo 64 classics such as Banjo-Kazooie and Conker's Bad Fur Day. Maybe they could work together and finally add and re-release Diddy Kong Racing. While not technically related to Microsoft, it is related to PCs via the company Valve. Yes, I'm talking about Portal Companion Collection, which will be coming out sometime later this year. This will contain first-person puzzle platform games of Portals 1 and 2. I haven't played these myself, but have only heard that they are absolutely phenomenal games. I'm sure we'll see an influx of the cake is a lie memes when this does come out. Rounding out our discussion of the collections is 2K, with the Borderlands Legendary Collection and BioShock the Collection. The former contains 3 games, Borderlands 1 and 2 and Borderlands the Pre-Sequel. BioShock contains BioShock Remastered 1 and 2 and BioShock Infinite. The Borderlands games are described as first-person shooters with RPG elements in them. They have a post-apocalyptic Fallout-type vibe, though with a comic book aesthetic. BioShock games are simply first-person shooters with absolutely fantastic stories and engaging gameplay. Borderlands has been reduced from 60 to 30 FPS to run on the Switch, but it does so extremely well. BioShock also sees the same reduction, though doesn't run quite as smooth as its Borderlands counterpart. Both of these are great games, and if you see them on sale, snag them. I hope you've enjoyed my brief introductions into the over 50 different collections that the Nintendo Switch has to offer. This is probably one of the most comprehensive back catalogs ever featured for a current gen system. There's a great chance that if you've got a favorite video game series, it probably is on one of these collections. Of these, which of these are your favorites? Is there a collection not yet featured or announced that you'd like to see on the Nintendo Switch? Let me know in the comments section below. Like and subscribe as well for more content. Thanks for watching and have a great day.